Well, good morning, everybody. How are you today? It is Friday, and this concludes the week of this week. Anyway, wanted to give you guys kind of an update if you're, at work and you're bored today, got nothing to do. Before I went in, to just kind of give you guys a, heads up on what's going on. So this week, FPC secured a second victory on the brace rule. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Waiting for some people to join, and I'll be able to give you guys a little update on that. So it looks like the brace thing is definitely going to be defeated in several different districts, and it's a very interesting ruling on the last one for sure. The judge really dug in hard and went against NFA, basically saying that the regulation of NFA they think is unconstitutional too. So we may be very well on the road to even repealing NFA shortly, which is fantastic. So a lot of people have been asking, what this means as far as a brace, what this means for as my pistols that I have, and what that means as far as legality of things. So the way it works is this: you have, if you are a member of FPC, which is Firearms Policy Coalition, you can join for really cheap. I think it's like $30. You are exempt from this brace law, and you're exempt because of two preliminary injunctions in two separate federal district courts. Now, what that means is that it doesn't matter if you live in that district. If you are a member, you are a plaintiff, and the court has found in your favor at this point. And in finding in your favor, what that means is that the ATF has no right to enforce these laws against you, and they found these laws to be ambiguous and several other things unconstitutional, etc. And because of that, there's been a preliminary injunction in place. So a preliminary injunction essentially means that the court finds that the plaintiffs, which is you, if you're a member of FPC, obviously it was the case of Mock versus Garland this week, and I think it has to do with Maxim Defense and some other people. So this case essentially asks, the question, is this brace law constitutional or unconstitutional? And the courts found that it was very unconstitutional. They found that there were way too many people involved, that there wasn't a clear interpretation of what the rules was. They also stated that there was not a very clear reason for the change. It affected way too many people, people that weren't being noticed. There wasn't a long enough period to register. They feel the registration may be even unconstitutional. But it's a very detailed ruling. I mean, I think it's like 60 or 70 pages. And if you want to read it, it's worth a read. There's also some great people on YouTube that will explain it in more depth. Armed Scholar is one. Four Boxes Diner is another that's really great to listen to. And those guys will give you the breakdown. It looks like we're really moving towards a destruction of the anti-gun agenda, and they are, losing a lot of the footings that they tried to have because of the Bruen decision. So the Bruen decision has essentially stated that going forward, any case brought, against gun control, and so a resolution of the Second Amendment and what it means, must go first to the text of the actual Second Amendment, and then the burden is shifted now to the government to provide proof of history where that law would be applied in history prior. And by it being applied prior in history, they have to prove, and they're talking not like prior to our country being formed, which is what they used to use. Hey, let's go back to the British times and find a restriction of guns. Obviously that wasn't what our founders envisioned. So 1791 is the era, because that is when the Second Amendment was actually founded upon. So that was when the ratification of the second was occurred. So the founding era is the 1791 era, not current law like 1900s. There's another interesting case, Rahimi, that just reached the Supreme Court. And essentially, the lower courts have struck down a standing prohibition law of being able to be in possession of firearms while under a like a rich domestic restraining order. With what you would get if your ex-wife and you were having a divorce, and your ex-husband if it's the other direction, and one of you filed a protective restraining order, basically saying, hey, I think this guy might hurt me or this girl might hurt me, and I want the court to intervene and put a restraining order against that person. So that case has been struck down as the USC law being completely unconstitutional to deny someone their right to ownership of a firearm just because they're under a domestic restraining order without ever having a hearing. And it's very, very rarely used as a crime, but they did in this situation. And Rahimi is not a good upstanding citizen, but he was prohibited from owning prior to conviction. And that's what they're trying to convey is like, hey, you can't just take away people's rights just because somebody says they're scared. And so that's actually getting in front of the Supreme Court. And if they use the Bruen test, which I'm assured they will, this longstanding law will be vacated. And that is the plan. And I think it's important to understand that the federal government at all stops has been out of control for many, many years, and basically making any law they can become a law that strips a person of that right to defend themselves and self-preservation. So it's a very important thing to understand that, yes, there are bad people. There are laws for those bad people. But those good people who get caught up in a situation with an upset partner or family member shouldn't be stripped of their rights just because, a person thinks they are dangerous, etc., without a court declaring them as such. So look for a lot of these ambiguous laws like this to be struck down over the next few years with this new Bruen decision. Another interesting one that happened about 6 months ago was a felon was in possession of a firearm, and that firearm had a defaced serial number. And the circuit court took the case and actually denied the federal government from using the defaced serial number law against the plaintiff and actually deemed that law to be unconstitutional. So essentially, because that serial numbers weren't used until probably early 1900s, they found that didn't follow Bruen, and so therefore those laws couldn't be used against him in conviction. Now, of course, the guy got a conviction for felony in possession, which again is another thing that's up for really review, and there's going through the courts right now is felon possession laws. So the strict point of just taking away a person's rights because they committed a felony. Now, keep in mind, felonies aren't all dangerous. Felonies can be simple things like you didn't do your taxes right, or you evaded taxes, or you wrote a bad check over $700, or you robbed somebody of $700, not by gunpoint, but just like stole their car, or there's things people do when they're stupid and they're young. There's things that people do when they're older and they're dumb. Plain and simple is that they're saying that, hey, look, the consensus of history stated that we don't have laws that strip you of your rights unless you're a dangerous person. Okay, and a dangerous person in history was considered someone who would be removed of their rights. However, I will state that during history they also used that against minorities and Indians and the Irish and the Italians. And that's why the Italians started to create a base of like a mob faction, is because the federal government and the unions, the federal government and the big corporations kind of just got rid of them and replaced them with the Irish because they came in cheaper to work. And so the Italians basically started the unions to protect their rights to work. There's some history back behind it. You can read up on it. And that's kind of how the mob got started, is because they started to get screwed over in society, and they went ahead and became aggressive people to keep themselves up and be able to make a living and put pressure on the businesses and put pressure on the society. There's a whole bunch of interesting history. If you really got time to read it, it's kind of a really interesting scale. So, but either way, the rulers of our country over time, prohibited black people after they became slaves. They didn't want slaves that became free to have firearms, so they made all these laws. NFA was one of them. They also wanted to keep machine guns out of the hands of poor and middle class. It wasn't just about, the Italians having a shootout. That was just their excuse. It's kind of similar to the situations today where they have a school shooting and suddenly everybody can't have full, high-capacity magazines, as they claim, which are just standard magazines. You can't have specific guns, because those are dangerous. You might be able to conceal that shorter AR, but in a pistol form, it's safe. That's okay, but if you put a stock on it, oh my God, it's the most dangerous thing in the world. That is what the court recently, in the Mock versus Garland case, pointed out is like, and they very clearly stated it in the decision, which I thought was brilliant, is that putting a stock or a brace on this shorter AR doesn't make it more dangerous. It makes it safer. It actually turns the gun into a more controllable firearm, which in turn is better because you have less chance of hurting other people possibly in the room if you had to use it in self-defense. So they didn't buy the ATF's arguments at all about these weapons were scary and dangerous and unusual and were going to cause a bunch of havoc. And the courts, viably, understand that because there's 50, 60 million of these things plus out there. And we're not having like millions of homicides with these shorter guns on a daily basis. So obviously that's all bullshit. So very interesting things that happened this week. Also, another great thing, Rare Breed Trigger finally had their day in court in Texas. And the owner, Lawrence DeMarco, came out and did tell the media that he said that the case that he felt went very well, and the judges were very receptive to the system and how it worked, and that they did not agree that this was a machine gun, it seemed. He didn't come out and say the specifics, but I've heard that through different channels, that he believes that the court will do the right thing here and will strike down the ATF's enforcement of the Rare Breed Trigger from being sold. And that they were very understanding to what's going on, and that it's a very clear and easy determination. And so he was feeling very good about that with the National Association of Gun Rights that helped him to bring this lawsuit. So if you have money to vote, vote with your pocket. National Association of Gun Rights is making a lot of moves. The GOA, the Gun Owners of America, is another group to give money to. And Firearms Policy Coalition. Those are the three groups that are actually working for you. I know a lot of people are hardcore NRA guys, but I will warn you, the NRA does nothing. The NRA is all about making money and profitizing and paying the head of the NRA rather than doing anything for litigation. In the last 10 years, the NRA has done nothing but most everything that has come across the gun control desk. In fact, they are the ones that push the bump stocks to be banned. Now, keep in mind, bump stocks are currently tied up in litigation, too, and we do have also 2 wins on the bump stocks. We have 1 loss, and so the Supreme Court 2 losses, Supreme Court is also going to take a bump stock case, and I do believe that the cases are going to be reviewed, and the justices understand that this is not a machine gun also, and this is a jump of overreach by the ATF through the Chevron doctrine. And I believe that it is all going to fail also. So a lot of people who were concerned about this and gave up their bump stocks, be aware that, a lot of this stuff is going to get overturned. And we are finally in a situation in this country where, we're seeing the total destruction and chaos of our country daily. You can see it on the news all day, and it is disgusting. The people in this country are finally waking up to the fact that both parties are pretty corrupt. Both parties are in on destruction of our economy, destruction of the people, stealing all the wealth and funneling it to themselves. And so it's just a matter of time. But the founding fathers, would be rolling in their graves today with the amount of taxes we pay, with the amount of money we're giving away to other countries. Instead of giving it to our own people and making sure that our people are set up and taken care of, we're importing millions of illegal immigrants across the border right now. We are giving free everything to them. We're not taking care of our veterans. We're not taking care of our homeless. We're not providing places for people to go and get reeducated. We're providing that drugs are good and go out and do drugs. I'm actually really disgusted. I know a lot of people like to smoke weed. That's fine. I don't do that. And I don't like drugs at all. I think drugs are a very heinous thing on the economy. And if you look around St. Louis, I just drove around St. Louis last night, the county, and I'm just shocked. The damage that SandPage did to St. Louis County and shutting you guys down last year is just absolutely an abomination. Everything from St. Louis County's mall all the way around to Arnold on the 6167 route is just decimated. There's very few businesses open over there anymore. They've destroyed everything. I mean, I can't even tell you, I probably saw 300 to 400 places that were out of business that I know there were businesses there before. Pretty disgusting. I mean, if I'm disgusted, I don't even live up there. I think hopefully a lot of you guys are disgusted, and maybe you can start asking a lot of questions. Are our voting, are we actually voting, and we're getting votes recorded that are real? Or are we having people skew elections? Are we having the elections fixed? I'm a big believer that elections on the federal level all the way down to the local levels now are fixed and can be fixed, and nobody questions it, and it's a shame. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's just, when we were kids, everyone campaigned all the time. And if you didn't campaign, you would not win. And now, everybody doesn't campaign, and they magically get elected. Like, it's already known that they're going to get it, so why work? So ask yourself these questions. Why has that been a change that seems to be accepted now, like it's no big deal, but it was never accepted before, and people actually had to do the hard work to get elected. You had to have a name recognition. You had to spend the money. You had to go out and talk. You had to go around town and meet people, handshake, go to businesses. You don't have to do that anymore if you're a select person. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to be very awake to. We have SandPage come right out of this pandemic and so-called pandemic, and they turn around and they say that he won his election. I don't believe that. I believe that those people are getting appointed because they're yes men and they do what they're told to do, and there's a lot of money shuffling around. So I think people need to be very aware that the manipulation of our government is very prevalent, and that people need to wake up. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. There's a lot of people on here right now. Happy to answer questions. So we were talking about the big cases, the bump stock cases, the brace cases. So it looks like if you're an FPC member in 2 circuit courts now, anyone who's an FPC member is in a preliminary injunction, which means they're going to win on merits, a permanent injunction against the brace rule. So it's a pre-step to that ruling. AETF probably will try to appeal it. Maybe they won't. I don't know, but it's pretty stout right now, and you're protected in 2 courts. So basically what that means is if you're a member of FPC, you may now put your braces back on your pistols. There's nothing the AETF can do. You're covered by a federal court preliminary injunction, and you are able to own those weapons again. So those pistoled ARs and stuff that you enjoyed with the braces, those are now and have been legal since the ruling of the first preliminary injunction. But if you're an FPC member, you're certainly covered for sure. And then the rare breed trigger stuff arguments went down this week, and they feel very confident in the judge of the arguments in that Texas court. So we will probably most likely see an injunction there. Now, keep in mind that also had a stay, or a temporary injunction put in place within a week of that case being filed. So clearly, the judge believes that there's a very, very strong argument here that these are not machine guns, as the ATF claims. So rare breed trigger thing may turn around too. Bump stocks are 2 loss, 2 win, and going to the Supreme Court, and most likely will be overturned on the Bruin reasoning. And the customer just stated that it's top-down Marxist revolution. Well, if you look at history, you can see that the first way they take a country over is by making complete chaos. So turn their citizens against each other, make everybody fight amongst each other to come in and be Captain Save-A-Ho and try to rebound the country together, but in the same time just destroying it. So greatest nations in the world that conquered countries did the exact same thing, and Britain is one of the greatest at doing that, along with the Greeks. The Greeks. I'm sorry, not the Greek. The Romans. The Romans did that, and they made the people, basically get everybody to fight amongst each other, so that way when you come in to take over, they're not ready. And that's kind of what they're doing right now to us. Get all the factions of color against each other, make everybody hate each other. I don't have any problem with anybody of color. You want to come into my store, you want to spend money with us, great. We love your business just as much as the guy down the street who's pink or purple. It doesn't bother me at all. If you want to be gay, if you want to be straight, I don't care. I'm about making sure that everybody in this country has liberty and freedom, and that's what it's about. And everybody needs to be protecting of themselves. So if you come into Modern Weapon Systems, we'll be happy to sell you a gun no matter what you are. I'm happy to do business with everybody, because that is what it's about. It's about freedom and liberty, and a true constitutionalist understands that our country is founded on the rights of the people to be free in their own home and their own self and person. So if they want to be a stop sign, okay, you're a stop sign. That's great. Whatever you want to be, I don't care, because at the end of the day, that's your right as a citizen of the United States of America. So it's one of those things that right now we need to be all unified as much as possible, and we need to continue to work hard to be peaceful, make change. This week, Matt Gaetz made some major moves, put himself on the line. I think it's a wonderful move. We needed to make sure that speaker was held to the terms that he agreed to, and he did not hold to those terms. So he needs to be removed, and I believe that moving forward, we're going to see the same thing happen again and again if we don't get results. The American people are awake, and if you review like X, which is Twitter, and you go look at a lot of these people who are in Congress who are blind to whatever, because they're just all bought out and paid for, and they're getting big bumps back from special interest groups and businesses, and maybe some like one world government organization that's trying to control everything and enrich these people, obviously, because a lot of these people come from like not much money. Maybe they have a decent amount of wealth, but once they get in office, they become very corrupt. And that even happens on the state levels, and you can see that. All you have to do is go out there, search your state rep page, see if that person now suddenly has a nice car, has a bigger house, has, things that you wouldn't be able to afford on their income that they would make from that position. I mean, just look at their income versus what they're buying. And that should obviously be very easy to determine, what the problem is. So everybody is being bought and paid for, and in those power positions, and that is why they don't care what you think. And when you go onto Twitter, which I really like how open it is, because when you go on there and you look at your state reps pages or your U.S. reps or your U.S. Senate's seats, you'll see that people are telling them, we're done. We're done with the game. Stop the game. You completely don't listen to your base. We don't appreciate what you're doing. We aren't for what you guys are trying to say. Because like a lot of the guys will be like, oh, what Gaetz did is horrible. McCarthy's the best speaker ever, and I stand behind McCarthy. And then it's like 20,000 comments from people saying you don't stand behind your people. And that is what you're supposed to be doing, not behind special interests or your buddy club or whatever. And so it's great that people are finally opening their eyes and seeing what's going on out there. And, it's so corrupt. FBI, ATF, the CIA, it's been so corrupt for so long, and people are just so blinded by watching the mainstream news that they don't actually go out there and do the research themselves or listen to real facts. And I would say over the last year, those people that used to call out people and say, oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists, you don't believe in, this, and you don't believe in America, and, that's not democracy. That's all bullshit, because our government isn't a democracy anyway. It's a constitutional republic or democratic republic, whatever you want to call it. It's not a democracy. A democracy is a mob rule, which means that you get a group of people together and they all hate something that they can go out there and change it. That's not how our country is set up at all. In fact, that's exactly what our founding fathers didn't want at all, because that doesn't fix problems, and that allows the greater party of people in certain concentrated areas to rule an entire country, and they didn't want that. So the purpose of, these people saying, oh, one vote is one vote, one person, one vote, or whatever stupid crap. The reason they don't want that is because that's not a representation of an entire nation. That's a representation of a population, and that's a big difference. So when you go out there and you hear people say this, ask them, like, okay, so let's just say all of a sudden, New York became super hyper constitutionalist, and they wanted to repeal every gun law in this country, and which we should. I guess we can't really use that because that's the way it should be. So let's just say everybody didn't like, they became super conservative and they thought, man, we don't like water anymore. Would you be okay with that county of New York that has 34 billion people living in it to be able to say the rest of the country can't use water? And you'd say, that's absurd. Why would we do that? Because, maybe the people of Texas have water and we want to use water. Well, there you go. That's why. So they never really wanted the federal government to have the control that it has today. In fact, they didn't want the federal government at all. They wanted a state representation of the people in their particular states. That's why they set up the states the way they did. I don't think that the federal government was ever supposed to have an FBI. It wasn't ever supposed to have a CIA. It wasn't ever really supposed to have an EPA or an ATF. It was supposed to have state regulation, and those states set the rules within the boundaries of the federal law. And maybe there was federal marshals to do like cross-county, cross-state, pickup of, bad guys or following bad guys. Maybe that was more, truthful in the real founding look at what they envisioned. But they certainly didn't envision, 400 reps in the House. I can tell you that. They said one rep for every 30,000, said shall in front of it. So why do we not have one rep for every 30,000 today? Well, that's because nobody stood up to it, and they've just allowed it to happen. So we should have somewhere around 30 to 40,000 reps in the House. They shouldn't be in the House up in Washington, D.C. They should be sitting in the hometown, voting from their hometown to represent that group of people, the 30,000 people that they represent around them. And that was the original envision of the House of Representatives. And then the senators were to go to Washington to represent the state in a smaller fashion. So just to give you a little history, you can read that. It's in the actual Constitution. It was never amended either. And being that it was never amended, it didn't give authority for Congress to make that law. And that's called the Reapportionment Act. And you can look that up if you guys got time and you're bored and you want to learn about history. It's a very interesting defiance of our Constitution again. And just like the Second Amendment's a defiance of our Constitution, just like several things, just like people try to defy the Second Amendment without amending the Constitution. So that's kind of the status quo today. I know a lot of guys have been coming in lately saying that I need to start doing my videos again, so maybe I will. But I wanted to give some live coverage of the store. So also the store this week, people are coming in. They're spending money. They're starting to get a little nervous. Maybe that signal thing on, when was it, Tuesday or Wednesday, freaked people out. Maybe something's coming. I don't know, guys. I sure hope our government's not stupid enough to try to kill their people, but or harm their people. But after COVID, I'm not so convinced, and even some other things in history, I'm not so convinced. Obviously we want to keep our homes and our families safe. That's really, I think, a lot of our focus, and to keep our neighborhoods sound. But in the end of the day, I don't trust anybody anymore in our government, and that's really sad. And I think a lot of people feel that way. They're very worried that our government has ill intentions, and it's great and wise for you to be aware of that. Not saying that may necessarily be true, but I can't say that I necessarily agree that they don't. So with that, I hope to see you guys in the store eventually. We have a lot of great product right now, a lot of ammo in stock. If you are going to go out and hunt this year for deer, May want to grab your hunting ammo early. The 40, the 243, this 270, 450 Bushmaster, 30-06, 30-30. I got all of that in stock right now. When it does come up on hunting season, that stuff's going to be extremely hard to get. So make sure you grab it before that time because you may not be able to get it. It has been tight. I do also have some new 410 that just came in, and I do have some 20 gauge that just came in for deer. We haven't seen that in a long time either. That may be another one to grab while you need to. Don't have a ton of it, so make sure you do, if you're looking for that kind of stuff, you come in and check it out. But it's been great talking to everybody, and we'll go back to work today at 10 o'clock, and we'll be there, and hope to see you guys. Thanks again. Bye-bye.